Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about 4 aspects of the masculine and the feminine. Have you ever heard of the dynamic masculine and the static masculine? Or the dynamic feminine and the static feminine? I hadn't either, but I ran across some information, a book by Gareth Hill, Masculine and Feminine, The Play of Opposites in the Psyche. I think he wrote it back in the 90s. I'm just getting exposed to it now. But anyway, I thought it was kind of interesting to think about, instead of just a straight masculine and a straight feminine that has both, each has positive and negative qualities, to break it down a little further. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So before I get started, just a reminder, please subscribe to my channel and make sure you click on that bell to make sure you don't miss every time I upload a new video. So as I mentioned, Gareth Hill proposes these 4 aspects of the masculine and the feminine. And so I'll explain what each of them are. But I think one of the most interesting things is too, that not only do they play out within us and through our development as humans, but they also play out in the world outside of us, in culture, throughout the tens of thousands of years of Western civilization anyway. So let's look at the static feminine, then we'll look at the dynamic masculine, the static masculine, and end with the dynamic feminine. So the static feminine. On a personal level, we experience the static feminine when we are infants and we are completely dependent upon a nurturing parent, most often the mother. We start inside the mother's womb, completely dependent on her for everything. And then once born, then we see the world. The mother is the center of our world. Food, survival is all dependent on resources we get from our mothers and fathers. We're completely dependent on the mother for food and anything that helps us survive, including the sense of touch, right? That's a very important component of an infant's life, to be touched and assured and kept calm and peaceful. So the mother is the center of the universe. All things come from the mother. And interestingly, if we shift from this idea of the static feminine on a personal level and look at it as it has happened in our civilization's evolution, it's kind of the same thing. If you rewind back even 10,000 years, from about 10,000 years ago to 5,000 years ago, the civilizations, I'm talking mostly in old Europe and what was known as Anatolia, is now Turkey, were goddess worshiping cultures. So the mother goddess was the center of life for that civilization. All things came from the mother goddess. Life was cyclical, dependent on what was going on, what season it was, and what was going on during that season. And groups, even large settlements, were organized where the group was more important than the individual. So there was a focus also, many of those cultures were matrilineal, meaning that status and property passed from mother to daughter rather than from father to son. So everything was focused on the life-giving resources of the mother goddess. These civilizations were by and large peaceful and egalitarian, meaning that they were really based on the group, like I said before, sort of more democratic than hierarchical. So that is the static feminine, where the central figure, all powerful, all providing, is seen as a female and provides everything that the society or the person needs. From the static feminine, we move to the dynamic masculine. Now, this is a big change. On a personal level, you go from infancy, where you were completely dependent and your mother or nurturing parent was the center of your universe. Now you go to more independence and breaking away from that and wanting to assert your own will. So on a personal level, this happens in toddlerhood and goes right up through and into early adulthood, through adolescence and into early adulthood. So this is a time when we're establishing our own identity. We're no longer identified with our parent, and we're trying to become individual and act on our own and be independent. On a cultural level, a similar thing happened. We had that society, that peaceful society of goddess worshipers up to about 5,000 years ago. Then all of a sudden, these nomadic tribes come, and either through war or through just integrating, they took over those peaceful goddess worshiping settlements and brought with them, instead of a nurturing goddess, they had an angry, warlike sky father god. And so now all of a sudden, we weren't focused on the group. Now it was about individuals and building hierarchy. And it's no longer matrilineal, it's patrilineal. Patriarchy is imposed. Instead of peaceful, these new people that came in were more warlike. Instead of creating images for things in their world, including their goddess, now this new group is using starting to use more abstract symbols, writing, to talk about its message and to keep records first and foremost. And then they used it to put their message out. After moving through the phase of the dynamic masculine, then we move into the phase of the static masculine. And in this phase, on a personal level, this would be early adulthood into adulthood, where you're starting to establish your own family, you're in a career, so there's more structure. You're building more stability and structure in your life. And the same with these cultures. After the dynamic masculine comes in and overthrows the goddess-loving cultures, the static masculine starts establishing large cities, hierarchy. They are building structure and organization and stability following that dynamic masculine that came in and overthrew everything that came before. This is probably the time of like ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, when logic and thinking really start to take over imagination and sort of the poetic way of life of the goddess cultures. In these static masculine cultures, their deity was a stern father who brought order and had rules about how to worship and who should worship. The problem with these static masculine is bureaucracy, where the need for order and rules and process and procedure takes over common sense sometimes. But all of these four archetypes have an excess that they get to. And the final archetype we're talking about today is the dynamic feminine. Now, on a personal level, we see the dynamic feminine when children are at play, when they're free, they're flowing in what they are engaged in. Same thing as adults. When you're in a creative mode and ideas are flowing and you're just going with it, that's like the dynamic feminine. In culture, we may just be entering a period of dynamic feminine now, where we are no longer tied to, for example, ways of worshiping in our belief system. It's more on an individual basis rather than on prescribed on a cultural level, where it may be becoming more important to tap into wisdom rather than just in knowledge that you've learned over time. And like I said, returning to more your internal authority rather than the someone else telling you what you should believe and how you should act and what should be important to you. So those are the 4 archetypes that come out of the masculine and the feminine. Dynamic masculine and feminine, static masculine and feminine. And really, the idea is to be able to access all 4 of them. Not that we are just going to stay in what is now maybe the dynamic feminine, but that we realize that these are polarities. In fact, Gareth Hill talks about the polarity between the static feminine and the dynamic masculine. And the other polarity is between the static masculine and the dynamic feminine. And then taking both of those polarities and moving through them sort of in a figure 8 is trying to integrate and balance all 4 of those aspects of the masculine and the feminine. So I just thought this was kind of interesting because I had always just thought there was a masculine that had both negative and positive aspects, and there was a feminine that had both negative and positive aspects. But turns out it may be more complicated than that. So that is the 4 aspects of the masculine and the feminine. Let me know what you think. Have you read Gareth Hill's book? It's kind of interesting. He's a therapist, so it's really done in a therapeutic context, but he also mentions sort of the cultural connections as well in his book. So that's all I have for you today. And by the way, don't forget, I keep forgetting to mention this, I have a journal on Amazon.com called Exploring Identity, Direction, and Destiny. It's a 31-day journal. It's perfect for you if you're at a place in your life where you're kind of trying to find yourself again, trying to find your direction in life, wondering what the meaning of your life is. The entries that I've created for you in this journal have inspirational quotes. They have writing prompts, so you don't have to come up with a brainstorm on your own, and you should check it out. Get it for yourself or get it for a friend who might be going through some kind of a midlife crisis or a crisis of identity. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching today. I'm Beth Strathman. Till next time.